knows? I'm just trying to keep a lid on it every day.
Welcome to this video where we'll take about the movie Rambo Last Blood. We will begin by exploring the movie storyline, summarizing its plot and discuss the cast and characters. Then we will take a closer look at the film production details and box office performance. Finally, we will share review and audience reaction to give you a well-rounded perspective. Let's get started. This film opened in the Arizona where John Rambo Sylvester Stallone now lives on his father's ranch. which he shares with his close friend Maria Blerton, Andrina Braza, and her granddaughters Gabriela Yetiv, Monreal. The latter who views Rambo as something of an uncle. In the years since his last battle, Rambo has been plagued with the PTSD and is still haunted by the memories of death and the bloodshed. He has also been construction a series of the tunnels beneath the ranch. Gabriela asks if she can invite friends over to the tunnels for a party which Rambo allows. During the party, Gabriela is connected by her friend Jezzel, Francis Panda, who has information on the Gabriela long lost father Mohil Morco de la O. She explains her situation to Rambo, who knows the man and tells Gabriela that she could not have to go looking for a man that never better to have any part in her life. He also adds that he knows how troubled man can be and the pursuing this man would only hurt her. This carries into the next morning when Gabriela argues with the Maria about going to Mexico to find Miguel, who apparently used to beat Gabriela's mother before Rambo invested. Gabriela parents to be holding out somewhere nearby, but she instead drives to Mexico to meet with the Jezzel. She leads Gabriela to Miguel's house. He privately speaks to her and the family tells her that he never wanted anything to do with her or her mother. Gabriela leaves in tears, but the Jezzel tries to cheer up by taking her out to a club. There Gabriela talks to a man and has drinks before the sleep strikes into her drink. The next day, Maria gets a call from the Jezzel saying Gabriela has despair. Rambo takes it upon himself to drive out to Mexico and find Gabriela himself. He stops at the Mughal house and the intimates him by saying he should have broken his neck all those years earlier and that his whole mess in his own fault. Rambo then locates Chazelle and quickly figured that she could Gabriel into trafficking after the notice that Chazelle is wearing Gabriela blacklist that belonged to her mother. We then see that Gabriela is lined up among other the kidnapped young women being held captive by a cartel. One of the leader Victor Martiza Oscar Janiza drugs one woman who tried to escape inside and threatens them all with death if they try to escape again. Rambo forced Jessel to take him to the club where she took Gabriela. There they spot the man that Gabriela was talking to. Rambo is obsessed by a nearby woman named Carmen Delizardo, Paz Vega. Rambo follows the man to his car and threatens him with his knife. When he refuses to talk, Rambo hits him hard in the shoulders with the butt end of the blade before stabbing him and then digging into the shoulders want to crack his the bones painfully before the man reveals where Gabriela was taken. Rambo drives to the location of the cattle space where he is easily spotted. Camera has also followed him. Victor is joined by his mother huge Serico priest munchers and that their gang of men. Rambo walks to meet with the brothers with the men surrounding him. He takes out a picture of the Gabriela and the digging into the shoulders want to crack his bones painfully before the man reveals where Gabriela was taken. Rambo drives to the location of the cartel's base where he is easily spotted. Carmen has also followed him. Victor is joined by his brother Hugo, Serico priest, Machers, and their gang of men. Rambo walks to meet with the brothers with the men surrounding him. He takes out a piece of the Gabriela and the brothers recognize her. The gang beats Rambo deadly. and Hugo threatens Rambo with the hurting Gabriela since he came out for her. Victor then marks Rambo by cutting a V on his check and leaving him there for the dead. He is rescued by the Cameron, but the brother produces to the Toretto Gabriela. Over the next few days, Rambo recovers in the Cameron house while Gabriela is forced into the trafficking while also being drugged continuously. Meanwhile, Maria can only sit around and wait for the Rambo and the Gabriela to return. After Rambo wakes up, Camerons tell him that her sister was kidnapped by the Martin's brother Cartel and she was killed. She has been investigating them ever since in the hopes of bringing them down. Rambo gets himself ready to get Gabriela back. Rambo infiltrates a brothel and the selectors the man running the place as well as survival unlucky clients. He orders the women to run, but they all say that they will be killed if they run. He managed to find Gabriela's room where she is barely conscious. Rambo gets her out of there. The Matinza brother later come across the place and know that Rambo is responsible for the death of all their men. Victor is huge for not killing Rambo when they had the chance on the drive back to Arizona. Rambo tries taking Gabriela that she has also been a source of hope for him in the years since he came back home and that he cries about her a lot for him in the years since the come back home and that he cares about her a lot. Sadly, Gabriela dies moment later after succumbing to the excuse drug. Rambo returns home in the morning and must break the news to Maria. Rambo and Maria bury Gabriela in the backyard. Maria leaves the house to go stay with her sister, and she tells Rambo that she will remain and until the day she dies. Rambo now followed by the hatred and the revenge beings to rig the tunnels and set traps across the ranch. He returned to Mexico to ask for the Cameron help in the finding Victor. She is hesitant at first since she does not think that any good will come of it, but Rambo convinces her since these men are responsible for the death of people they both love. Rambo locates Victor home and the pursues to slay every man in his path before getting to Victor. When Hugo arrives, he finds Victor headless and the blood scrubs on the bed with the Gabriela picture stabbed into his chest. Rambo is then seen driving back and he tows Victor head on the highway. Bad with the Gabriela picture stabbed into his chest, Rambo is then seen driving back and he tosses Victor head on the highway. Hugo and his men prepare for war. The character drive to Rambo Ranch, where they wait for them. The first vans that drive onto the property get blown up by one of the body traps, the rest of the men beings to storm the tunnels where they get impaled by the other traps or get blown up by the C4 explosive. Rambo lurk in the darkness and the blasty and man that defines as well as dismember them with his blade as huge losses more and more than as well as demeasure them his blade as Hugh loses more and more men. Rambo gets closer to him and stands out a message through the radio. The first vans that drive onto the property get blown up, the rest of the men being to storm the tunnels where they get impaled by other traps or get blown up by the C4 explosive. Rambo lurks in the darkness and they blast any man that he finds as well as dismembers them with his blade as Hughes loses more and more men. Rambo gets closer to him and he sends out a message through the radio to let Hugo know that his death is coming. Rambo blows up the tunnels to bring all the remain men underground, but Hugo managed to get out and make it into the brand. Unfortunately for him, Rambo is waiting and he fires 4 arrows at the huge to pin him against the wall. Rambo approaches him and tells him that because Hugo ripped out Rambo's heart in the figurative sense. Rambo will now do that to him literally. He deeply cuts into the Hugo chest with his blade before pulling his heart out and showing it to him before Hugo dies. Rambo wanders from the fight, goes to sit in his rocking chair. His voice overstates that he is now alone, as everyone he has ever loved is now gone. But he will continue to fight. Pin him against the wall. Rambo approaches him and tells him that because Hugo ripped out Rambo's heart in the figurative sense, Rambo will now do that to him literally. He deeply cuts into the huge chest with his blade before pulling his heart out and showing it to him before Hugo dies. Rambo wanders from the fight, goes to sit in his rocking chair. His voiceover states that he is now alone as everyone he has ever loved is now gone, but he will continue to fight to keep their memories alive. After a life, Rambo picks himself up and rides his horse into the sunset. John Rambo has been living peacefully on his father's ranch in the Arizona with his friend Maria and her granddaughters Gabriela. When Gabriela learns that her father Mughal has been found in Mexico, she travels there against Rambo and the Maria wishes to meet with her friends Jazel and find Mughal. When she does find him, Maxwell tells her flat out that he never wanted to be her father. Gelser takes Gabriela to a club to cheer her up, but she is kidnapped by a Mexican cartel led by the brother Hugo and the Victor Martinza. Rambo finds out and goes to Mexico to save Gabriela, but the cartels beat him and the brothers Torito Gabriela after learning of her the connection to Rambo, a woman named Cameron DeLog, who owns sister and a dad because of the Martinza brother help Rambo recover, he goes to a brothel to recover Gabriela, but she dies on the way home due to being forcible drugs over a few days. Rambo and the Maria must bury her, and the Maria goes to stay with her sister. Cameron Deligo, who owns sister and a dad because of the Martin's brother help Rambo recover. He goes to a brothel to recover Gabriela, but she dies on the way home due to long forcible drug over few days. Rambo and Maria must bury her, and Maria goes to stay with her sister. Rambo returns to Mexico for revenge and is helped by Cameron to find Victor. Rambo structures Victor's and his guards to lure Hugo back, which he has racked up with the traps and the explosive. Sure enough, Hugo and his men storm the trench, where they are blown up, blasted, or the scared. Rambo saves Hugo for the last and the brutally kills him by cutting his chest open and ripping his heart out. A lot though weakened in the final battle, Rambo was to continue fight for the memories of his loved ones. The space drama starting Brad Pitt and directed by James Carey arrives on the big screen this weekend alongside two other nationwide release with the fierce competitions among older audience. Launch stage Rambo Last Blood and the focus features Downton Abbey. All their titles are having modest debut around $20 million and will contend with the recurring clamps. Warner Bros. It Chapter 2 for first place on the domestic box office charts based on the Stephen King terrifying novel It Chapter 2 collected $39 million last weekend and should pull in other $20 million its in third outing in theaters. After 2 weekends of release, the horror blockbuster has amused $324 million worldwide. Rambo Last Blood, the fifth chapter in the Sylvester Stallone action franchise, is accepted to have the strongest star among the Terry of the News Corner and could earn as much as $24 million when it hits 3,500 North American theaters. Long stage and captives, a lunch between $70 million and $20 million, similar to 2008 Rambo. $18.2 million only on installment. 1985 Rambo First Blood Part 2 has debuted above $20 million. That film bowed with the $20.7 million and still ranks as the highest grossing entry with the 300 million in the global ticket sales. The character's latest outing in 2008 Rambo and in its box office run with a moderate $130 million from a $50 million budget. In Last Blood, Stallone is reprising his role as John Rambo, a role first introduced to audience in 1982. His final go-around sees the winter name war, journeying to Mexico to save his niece after she was taken hostage by the cartel. Andrina Gunberg directed the film, which was co-written by the Stallone. Like Rambo Last Blood, Ad Astra looks to appeal to mostly older men moviegoers. Estimates show the sci-fi thriller could make $80 million to $20 million from the 3,450 screen, which would be a rocky debut considering it cost over $80 million to make. Unlikely Dark Panics, The Art of Wrecking in the Rain, and the other recent Fox tags that the Destiny has been tasked with the release since acquiring. Tasked with releasing since acquiring the its film Empire, and Astra has the benefit of strong review, but the critical reviews after its Venice Film Festival premiere might not be enough to attract the kind of the crowds needs to make Ad Astra profitable. Dramas, especially those of the science fiction variety, are having a notable though time at multiplex. Part of the problem is that film in that genre often have intricate plots that are difficult to intrinsically convey in thriller on movie posters. In classic special like the Gravity Installer and the Martina were once massive box office success, but recent tales like First Man and The Annihilations have failed to hit the moviegoers. Universal First Man, similar to Ad Astra, focus on a more personal journey. However, Rihanna Gosling log portrayal of the famed astronaut Neil Armstrong, along with the hype of director Damon Chazelle follow-up feature after La La Land, was not enough to save First Man from becoming a commercial mess. The $60 million film trapped out with the $105 million worldwide. Ad Astra followed Roe MC Berg, Pete and the astronaut on a mission across time and the space to uncover the truth about his missing father. The cast allows included Tommy Lee Jones, Ruth Negga Lai Taylor, and the Donald Sutherland. While there are certainly no storage of the adult squid offerings this weekend, Downton Abbey should attract a more predominantly female gathering. The film a continue of the purely females sake from the popular TV show in accepted to earn $60 million to $20 million from the 3,067 vacancies. It unclear if Down Abbey will break out being fan of the television series that ran for the sixth season over the course of 5 years, and the variety Dan D. Adrian note the film is excellently designed as blame for the annoying heads of those who love watching the TV versions. Series creator Jolina Fellow wrote Down Abbey, which was directed by Michael Wenger. Much of the original cast included Hugh Bonvilla, Elizabeth MC. Michael Donkey, and the Mickey Smith, written for the big screen adaptation set in the late 1920s. Down Abbey picks up with an official state visit by Kind and Queen to the Grail family home. The British period drama kicked off last weekend at the international box office, where it has earned $111.7 million so far. Sylvester Stallone, 26% Rotten Tomatoes, lags a sequel top streaming charts ahead of his John Statham film. To fans of classic sports movie, Sylvester Stallone will also be known as Rocky, but he also plays an action icon for nearly 4 years on multiple movies. Stallone first made his debut as John James Rambo in the 1982 film First Blood, and it was not until 2019 that they portrayed the characters for that will likely be the final time in Rambo Last Blood. The 2019 Rambo film certainly began streaming on the Netflix, and it has wasted no time becoming one of the most popular movie on the platform, sitting at 5 at the time of writing. Rambo Last Blood earned devising score of 26% from the critics and 81% from the audience on the aggregate site Rotten Tomatoes, and the film earned $91 million at the global box office on a budget of $50 million. In addition to sharing in the movie, Stallone also received a written credit for his work on the Rambo First Blood along with the Matthew Clark, Dan Goldens, and the David Morrell, all receiving credit as well. Adriana Grunberg stepped up to direct the film, and it came even years after the made his directorial debut on the Get the Gringo, the 2012 R-rated action thrill starring M. Gibson. He most recently directed 5 episodes of the Netflix original series Pandos, and he also teamed up with the Jason Lucas and the Omar Capture for the Black Demon, the monster thrill that the streaming on Prime Video. Gordon also worked as scribe 20 years before Rambo Last Blood on the Hurricane, the 1999 R-rated political thriller starring Denzel Washington, and the live scriber monster thriller that the streaming on the Prime Video. Gordon's also worked as the scribe 20 years before Rambo Last Blood, the Hurricane, the 1990 R-rated political thriller starring Denzel Washington and Lewis Curbers that currently streaming on the Peacock. Sylvester Stallone will earn another writing credit on A Working Man. Sylvester Stallone has been earning acting credit since he made his as the Rocky in 1976, and now nearly 50 years later, he still works as a scribe. He is still working as a scribe. Stallone will earn another writing credit for his the contributes to A Working Man, the upcoming action thriller starring Jason Statham and directed by David Ayer. Stallone also recently wrote 2 episodes of the Tulsa King, the Taylor Sheridan's credit series that the streaming on the Paramount Plus. Stallone also worked with the Statham throughout the 2010 on the Extendable series, the action franchise, where the two also star alongside other action iconic like Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, and more. Rambo Last Blood star Sylvester Stallone and was directed by Adrian Grunberg. Adrian Grunberg stayed run to Collider for thriller starting Jason and directed by David Ayer. Stallone also recently wrote 2 episodes of the Deuce King, the Taylor Sheridan's credit series that is streaming on the Paramount Plus. He will also work with the Statham through 2010 on the Expendable series, the action franchise, where the two also star alongside other action iconic like Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, and more. Rambo Last Blood stars Sylvester Stallone was directed by Adriana Grunberg. Stay tuned to Collider for more streaming updates and watch Rambo Last Blood on Netflix. Rambo Last Blood for the franchise best box office opening. Directed Last Blood is projected to have the biggest box office opening in the franchise history. Sylvester Stallone will reprise his role as the John Rambo for the 5th time overall in The Last Blood, and the first since his last appearance as the character in 2008 Rambo. The actor originated the role all the way back in 1982's First Blood, which itself was an adaptation of the David Morrell 1972 novel about the traumatized Vietnam War veterans John Rambo and his the battle with the authority in a small town, directed by Adriana Grunberg. Get the Gringo from a screenplay by the Stallone and the mytho-cranking Southpack absence. Last Blood picks up in the real time after 2008. Directed by Adriana Grumps, Get the Gringo from a screenplay by the Stallone and the Matthew Crawling South back, abstinence, Last Blood pick up in the real time after 2008 Rambo, and it with the slay title, characters visiting hits the strained father at his the worst form in the Arizona zone has since settled into a quiet life in the wake up of his father passing, but the returns to action when a friend's daughter is kidnapped by the dangerous Maxina cartels led by the cruel huge Martizina Serico prayers men's heart. According to dealing, the Rambo Last Blood is projected to grow between $20 and the 24 million during its the USA opening weekend next month. That would be a new franchise high ahead of the Rambo $80.2 million takes in the 2008 and the Rambo First Blood Parts 2 currently series high $20.1 million debut from the 1985. These totals are unadjusted for the inflations of the course, assuming it goes that high. Last Blood may give the long side another weekend atop the domestic box office after Angel has fallen. Regan Superman last week depend on how strongly War Bros. Honor sequel IT Chapter 2 is still going by that point. The Last Blood marketing has portrayed the film as being a valiant western style swing soak for the stallion John Rambo in the same vision as movie like Long. It's the most commercial title arriving on 20 September, and they should not have much trouble extending the opening takes for its film-wide release like the Brad Pitt led Space Odyssey at Austin, which looks to open with the 70.5 $90 million dollar, which still the chance that either at Ostra or the Down Note Abbey movie, which also premiered that weekend, will excuse the currently estimated Down Abbey is projected for a $5 to $16 million debut. But Last Blood is the most likely to come out on top all the same. If it does, Last Blood should give the Stallion give his best USA box office opening for a non-credit movie where they plays a leading role. So Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 does not count either. Since the expanding 2 hit theaters in 2012, most of the sleigh action vehicles have disappointed commercials since then. But Last Blood has power of the non-stage and the premiere of Rambo unleashing R-rated broadly on his the enemies on its side, so that should not be the case here. And with the Rambo Last Blood ready to serve as the sleigh surprisingly fine bow on the franchise, it may yet end the character's greater journey on a bloody strong note. Downton Abbey tunes Rambo Last Blood and the Brad Pitts ad extra at Tuesday box office. Downton Abbey, the movie adaptation of the popular ITV and the PB series, made $2.1 million at the Tuesday box office from 2,800 theaters. It opened in 3,076 theaters this weekend. This film from the Focus feature edged out the and the Millenniums, Rambo Last Blood, and the Ad Astra from the 20th Century Fox and Destiny. All three films are in a tight race this weekend as the top new operate at the box office, with all three projects between roughly $16 to $14 million, and they have to connect it with the still strong IT Capture 2. It Chapter 2 and The Hostelers. Down Abbey already made $2.2 million in early sneak preview screenings, and the film opened last week internationally, where it has made $11.7 million across 7 marks in the UK where the film is set. It earned the number 1 spot and the opened to $6.3 million. The Tuesday previous brings its the ultimate total to roughly $4.5 million domestically. Downton Abbey is focus features Friday's release since Atomic Blood in 2017, while they are distinctly different. Down Abbey already made $2.2 million in early snake premium screens, and the film opened last week internationally, where it has made $11.7 million across 7 markets in the UK where the film is set. It earned the number one spot and opened to $6.3 million. The Tuesday preview brings its cumulative total to roughly $4.5 million domestically. Downton Abbey's focus features widest release since Atomic Blood in 2017. While they are dramatically different films, that movie earned $1.5 million in previous and the opened to $80 million. Tracking suggests that Downton Abbey will open between 16 to $20 million this weekend against a budget of the approximately $30 million. It currently has a score of 85% on Rotten Tomatoes based on the Julian Fellows hit series. Downton Abbey sees the retuning of the show's original cast led by Hugh Benwell, Makia Smith, Elizabeth McGraw, and the Michael Stockery as the residents and the servants of the famed English manor prepare for a visit from the kind Gorgo. The Michael Alliger directed from a script by the Fellows. Rambo Last Blood, the fifth and the final Rambo film for the Sylvester Stallone, made $1.3 million from just under 2,900 locations. It opened on 3,680 screens this weekend. The studio is opening Last Blood to earn between 7 to 20 million with the independent trackings, saying it is likely to top out a $24 million. That would be enough to be the largest opening for any Rambo movie. The 2008 Rambo opening to only $80 million. Last year, reboot of The Predator opened to $25 million after earning $2.5 million in the Tuesday previous. From another recent camp, Millennium Angle has the Fallen made $1.5 million in previews and the open to $21.3 million. Adrian Gunberg directed the film based on a story by the Stillman, who also co-wrote the screenplay with the Matt Krylonic. The film is set for decide after First Blood and finds John Rambo confronting his past and the unearthing his old weapons and combat skills as he hunted at his home and seek revenge in one final mission. Adrian Gunberg directed the film based on a story by the Stillman, who also co-wrote the screenplay with the Matt Krylonic. The film is set for decide after First Blood and finds John Rambo confronting his past and the unearthing his whole weapons and the combat skill as he hunted at this home and seeks revenge in one final mission. Finally, Ad Astra, which starred Brad Pitt from the director James Carey, actually came in the second place Tuesday and the launched to $1.5 million at the Tuesday box office. It opened on 3,450 screens this weekend, included 318 screens in the IMAX 340 premium larger format screen and the 130D box 4D locations, while the Fox release in the same ballpark as the other three titles projected to earn between 80 to 20 million in the opening weekend. It's again a much higher budget of the roughly $80 million from the comparison First Man, another melancholy astronaut film with and the A-list star in the Ryan Gosling, stupid to only $1.1 million at the Tuesday box office last fall on its way to a $60 million opening. Another critical acclaim, Satisfy Arrival opened to $24 million in 2016 against a $1.5 million Tuesday launch. Ad Astra is a Paramount thrill in the space that follows Ro MC Bright on a mission across and the unforgiving solar system to uncover the Earth, but his missing father and his dominate expeditions that now 30 years later theaters the universe. The film also stars Tommy Lee Jones, Liv Taylor, Ruth Negga, and the Donald Sutherland in the film, directed and written by James Carey, that he currently has 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Rambo Last box office percent point to the series' best opening. Age has no appear to slow down John Rambo neither on the big screen or at the box office according to early estimates. Industry analysts predicting Rambo Last Blood, the upcoming fifth installment in the iconic action franchise, is tracking to earn approximately 21 to 24 million dollar across its open weekend at the domestic box office. Even at the low and with the estimate this would give the vulnerable film its best opening weekend. The previous record holder without adjusting for the inflation is the 1985 Rambo First Blood Part 2, which opened to $20.1 million domestically after adjusting for the inflating one 1985 sequel opening weekend. Total comes in the approximately $47.9 million. The previous film in the franchise, 2008 Rambo, had a domestic opening weekend of $80.2 million before earning $130 million at the worldwide box office across its interior theatrical run. Last Blood features Sylvester Stallone and opium's victims for the veteran trying to enjoy a quiet life of peace at his family ranch in the Arizona after a friend daughter is kidnapped by the Mexican cartels. However, the former special forces Last Blood features Sylvester's Stallone, Panamanian victims, war veterans trying to enjoy a quiet life of peace at his family ranch in the Arizona after a friend's daughter is kidnapped by the Mexican cartel. However, the former special forces soldier takes the fight across the border with the bloody results. Directed by Adrian Gunberg, Get the Gringo from a script written by the Sylvester Stallone and the Matt Krelink. Abstinia Rambo Last Blood star Stallone, Paz Vega, Sergio Press, Manchita and the Yvette Monreal. The film hits theater skip 20. Box office downturn. Abbey rings over at Oscar Rambo Last Blood with the $31 million debut. In a box office win fit for a queen, Focus features Downton Abbey rules over the captation in the North American. The big screen conversation of the popular British TV show beat expectations with the $31 million money debut in 3,079 theaters, setting a new opening weekend record for the specialist studio. Down Abbey easily surprised fellow newcomer at Ostra and the Rambo Last Blood, which are in a close race for the second place. Overseas, the royal period drama has collected $41 million to date for a worldwide tally of the $61.8 million series. Character Julian Fellows wrote Down Abbey with the Michael Anelger directing. Much of cast from the TV show included the huge Banwell, Elizabeth McGovern. In a box office win fifth for a Queen, Focus features Downton Abbey ruled over the competition in North America. The big screen conversations of the popular British TV show best expectations with the $31 million money debut in 3,079 theaters, setting a new opening weekend record for the specialist studio. Downton Abbey easily surprised fellow newcomers at Oscar and the Rambo Last Blood, which are in a close race for the second place. Overseas, the royal period drama has collected $41 million to date for a worldwide total of the $61.8 million. Series creators Juliana Fellows wrote Down Abbey with the Michael. Overseas, the royal period drama has collected $41 million to date for a worldwide total of the $61.8 million. Series character Juliana Fellows wrote Down Abbey with the Michael England directing. Much of the cast from the TV show included Hugh Banwell, Elizabeth McGovern, Michael Dockery and the Mega Smith returning for the film adaptation. Downton Abbey now ranked as the biggest opening weekend from a specialty studio in the last decade, as well as the second best star from the specialty fair behind the Westerns company in Gloria Best rates $38 million. Moviegoer consisting mostly of the older females award the film with the cinema score, the highest grade among this weekend. New offerings for competition at Oscar landed a B, and the Rambo Last played skewer a B. As for the Down a B, 74% of ticket buyers were the females and 60% were over the age of 35. Audience were clearly ready to come back to downtown and visit the Creolesis and all the familiar faces upstairs and the downstairs, said Lisa Burnell, Focus Features, president of the distribution. At its core, it's a story about family and the audience. Both originally fans and the newcomers are uplifted by that laughter and joy of the film. They are thrilled to be a part of the some things that began nearly 10 years ago with our friends and the colleagues at the NBC International and the Carnival Films, and to have it remains with the NBUC Universal family with us now do so well is amazing. Meanwhile, Ad Oster looks to have public slides ahead of the Rambo Last Pledge in North America, arriving on the highest end of the projecting with the $90.2 million from the 3,450 Venice steel. The astronaut drama starting Brad Pitt and directed by James Carey will need to have a long journey in the multiplex to justify its $80 million price tag. Ad Astra also launched at the international box office with $26 million for a global star of $45.2 million. Destiny acquired the movie, which was produced by New Regency after inheriting Fox Film. We are encouraged by the weekend result, said Kathleen Tev, Destiny president of the global distributions. The combinations of that talented of the James Carey and the Brad Pitt because a must-see cinematic experience. Audience who wanted to watch Ad Astra in theaters open to see it in the best possible quality IM screens accounted for the $4 million of the ticket sales, representing 20 million of domestic box office receipts. International market contributed another $2.6 million for a global gross of the $6.6 million of the initial weekend crowd. 44%, 54% were male and the nearly 75 were above 25 years old. Ad Astra followed Roe MC Bush, Pete, and the astronaut on a mission across time and space to uncover the truth about his missing father, Tommy Lee Jones. Ruth Negga life, the lore, and the Donald Sutherland proud out to the cast. Though long stage Rambo Last Blood was the forest to lead box office cards, the final chapter in the Sylvester Stallone action franchise should finish the weekend in the third place. The official order could change when the final numbers are tallied on the Monday. The film earned $90.50 million from the 3,680 location in lines with the studio expectations and the slide ahead of 2008 Rambo $80.2 million. The 3,680 location in line with the studio expectations and the slightly ahead of 2008 Rambo $80.2 million. The latest entry in the series to race the silver screen. Adrian Gunberg directed the film, which was co-written by the Stallone. Rambo Last Blood is expected to be Stallone's final go-round as the John Rambo, a character first introduced to audience in the 1980s. To no surprise, older men accounted for the majority of evening weekend crowded. 66% of opening weekend crowd were male, while 42% were over the age of 30. After 2 weeks atop domestic box office chart, Warner Bros. Its Chapter 2 slide to number 4. The sequel based on the Stephen King's terrifying novel pulled in the $70.2 million, its third outing for a domestic tally of the $179 million. Rounding out the top 5 is the STX Hostler with a $70 million and especially promising figure considering 3 new films debut this weekend after 2 weeks of release. Hustler has amused $62 million in North America and $9.84 million overseas for a worldwide haul of the $72 million. The film, directed by Lorena Sacrifia and starring Jennifer Lopez, Constance Wu, Kiki Plummer, and the Lily Reinhardt, cost $20 million to produce. Not all holdover were a fountain. Warner Bros. The golf finish plummeted to number 15, scraping together just $76 lakh from the 2,542 theaters during its second weekend in theaters. Annalise Aligo stars in the movie adaptation of the Donna Tartt Puzzler Prize-winning novel, which has made $4.5 million to date, though Amazing Studio co-convinced the Glot the $45 million film still stand to be a big money loss for the Warner Bros. Rambo Last Blood Review. Lean, efficient, and the brutal, this is likely the weakest of the Rambo series, but at 73, Stallone still deserves some respect, literally leaving the playing field against multiple opponents half his age. With the last three films not set a decide apart, it has been slow progress getting another Rambo entry out of the gate, but it does some way to shows still an investment in the franchise and the characters, unwilling to the compares for a laser script in the favor of a faster turnaround, Escape Plan 2 and Escape Plan 3. With the last three films now set a decide part, it has been slow progress getting another Rambo entry out of the gate, but it does. But it goes some way to show Stallone investment in the franchise and the characters, unwilling to compromise for a lesser script in the favor of a faster turnout. Escape Plan 2 and Escape Plan 3. Of course, that not to say that compares have not been made, with The Last Blood clearly shot on a budget much more evidently than the 2008 Rambo, where Stallone on the strong directorial from the wisely made the most of the Thailand location to the disguise any similar limitation, and now limited a little bit by the just but even the childish out of the solid grant Stallone can the actually still do in these civitations. Last Blood affords Stallone some the visuals bluntly finally brings the characters home for the first time in almost 40 decides, only to find himself in a very different kind of hell. Director Adrian Gunberg takes the plan him time out, and he is not a bad choice, particularly given the Mexico location, with experience handling one of the Mel Gibson's best feature scenes is the excellent and distant payback cousins get the Gango arc how and spend my summer vacation, which work on an even tiger budget to still deliver style and the punch where it counts. Last Blood similarly captures our textures, set side to Mexico or the Bulgaria, dressed up the surprisingly well and afford Stallone some the viscers promptly. Final brings the characters home for the first time in almost 40 side, only to find himself in a very different kind of hell. The story sees John Rambo living a quite happy life on his old family farm, whiling away his time breeding horse, fording blades, and the building expanse tunnel under the waste air cage. Both will come in the handy. He lives on the property with one of the ladies who work his late father ranch and with her rancher's granddaughter Gabriela, whose ill advice Dill escape the boy. Dill escapes the barrier into Mexico Tiger full combat made in the X-grade bread and brings the blood and the violence all the way back home. Nobody should be accepting a miracle here. Still in 73, in amazing shape but still 73, and funding for the long Gastings project was clearly limited, so much like the last one where Stillon relayed that actually used the over-the-top violence and gore to disguise some of the budget limitations. Last Blood eventually this second into undercharge, hoping that this will be enough to sensations fans of the franchise who are looking for one last fix. The result of doing this is something of a more jarring ride than before, however, building with the surprisingly elegance and the beauty in the scene on the ranch. Perhaps not fully unlikely the steps the previous film Rambo, which similarly bookended the brutally and established this older father figure who is evidently protective of this younger niche, but then losing its the footing somewhat in the mid act, where scenes of the rescue get complicated and the path to a valiant final gets similarly mediate it still and the official features never outstaying it the welcome, and it could be around it that the mid-act choice are at least moderately surprising, but perhaps there are little Frenchies missing, particularly when First Plus is the drown. There's something to be said for the seeing Rambo back in action and Last Blood versus a sample 6 over 10 scope upper notice just on the pure rage alone. There are some surprisingly faces in here, from the Adrena Braza award nominated in the Bible and recently in Dora and the Low City of the God, the Pez Vega Spanish more recently in the OA, but it's clearly Stalvan baby, and he the one who gets you to the finish line. He has convincing training horses and working the trench as he's playing claymore mains and the hacking lime off, and he really looked like he made of pure steels, particularly when the final takes him back to killing machine mode and we stick around for a stunning Rambo montage over the credits and a singer at the end of it. Fans should rightfully moderate expectations in the respect of this being a worthy follow-up to 2008 Rambo Out. With that said, Stallone still deserves his due for the turning in such a committed battle and the raw performance at his age. There's something to be said for the seeing it's a Rambo back in action and Last Blood pushes a simple 6 over 10. Fans should rightfully moderate expectations in respect of this being a worthy follow-up to 2008 Rambo, but with that said, Stallone still deserves his due for turning in such a combat, brutal and raw performance at this age. There's something to be paid for seeing his the Rambo back in action, and Last Blood pushes a simple 6 over 10 score up notice just on the pure rage alone. Rambo Last Blood to duke it out with its Chapter 2 at international box office. The action thriller opens day and date with in North American both Thor, Long Gates and the Millennium. Media lenses are ready to make some noise. Rambo is expected to deliver strong number in the UK, Australia and New Zealand, Germany, Russia, Brazil, Thailand and Hong Kong today 19, followed by Mexico, the Middle East, Sweden and the Singapore among other on Friday. Rambo Last Blood opened in the Philippines on the Wednesday. The last time the veteran warrior weighed into the action was in Rambo in 2008, which grossed $70.5 million internationally and $130.2 million worldwide. On that occasion, it opened in the UK on $2.5 million in Rotten to a $6.2 million final gross and debut in Australia on $1.1 million for a $2.7 million finish. Germany, Russia and Brazil delivered $2.8 million, $6.5 million final gross, $1.6 million, $3.3 million and the UK on the $2.5 million in Rotten to a $6.2 million final gross and debut in Australia on $1.1 million for a $2.7 million finish. Germany, Russia and Brazil delivered $2.8 million, $6.5 million gross, $1.6 million, $3.3 million and 7,23,000, $1.9 million respectively. Mexico generated 7,40,000, $2.1 million and the highest performing market when When all was said and done was friends on the $7.6 million. Adrian Grunberg directed Rambo Last Blood from a screenplay by the Matt Krunkic and the Stalvan. Vega also starred in the story that sees Rambo darts off his weapon and cross the border to confront a Mexican drug cartel and rescue his friend daughters. Millennium Media executive report Angel Has Fallen has researched $53.6 million from its international markets climbing to $150.1 million factoring in North America. Dues for Great Butler has produced $7.6 million in the UK, $4.3 million in Australia and New Zealand, $3.4 million in Germany, 3.3 in the Taiwan, 3.2 million in the Mexico, 2.7 million in the Italy, 2.2 million in the each of Spain. Adrian Grunberg directed Rambo Last Blood from a screenplay by the Matt Krunkic and the Stalvan. Paswick also starred in the victory that sees Rambo dudes off his weapon and cross the border to confront a Mexico drug cartel and rescue his friend's daughter. Millennium Media executive report Angel Has Fallen has researched $53.6 million from its international market climbing to $150 million factoring in North America. This for Great Butler has produced $7.6 million in the UK, $4.3 million in the Australia and New Zealand, $3.4 million in the Germany, $3.3 million in Taiwan, $3.2 million in the Mexico, $2.7 million in Italy, $2.2 million in each of Spain, Indonesia and the Netherlands, $2.1 million in the France, $1.8 million Middle East, $1.5 million in the Philippines, $1.2 million in the Vietnam, and $1.1 million in the Colombia and the Thailand. Russia your teacups. The big screen enough of the down Abbey handling but very politely thumb both the brands Pete at Ostra and the Sylvester Stallone Rambo Last Blood in theaters over the weekend in one of the more unlikely box office upsets. Downton Abbey debuted with the $31.1 million in ticket sales, according to studio estimates Sunday rollout trumping the $90.2 million opening for Ad Astra and the $90 million debut for Rambo Last Blood. Neither the draw of Pete in the space nor a bandit warning Stallone could match the appeal. A tea party with the old friends. While the short performance of the Downton Abbey had come to be executed in the lead up to release, it was still striking the debut marketing the best weekend ever for Fox's features in its 7-year-old history. It ranked as the best opening for and the Spicy Studio in a decade. We always knew that there was a tremendous amount of love for the Downton Abbey, said Lisa Bernal, Focus distribution chief, but as we started on working with the promotions and special events for the movie, we realized that the love for the Downton Abbey goes away beyond that we even thought it was going to be. Coming for years since the series' final, Downton Abbey returns more of the original cast and was penned by its creator Jolina Fellows to drums up animated focus, hosted dress up and the downtown parties while the film drew a healthy amount of the younger moviegoers, 31% under 35. Its audience was the predictable largely female, 74 and the older, 32% over 55, a seldom credit to democracy. Critics credited the film warmly, 85% fresh on the Rotten Tomatoes, but audience were even more ecstatic giving it an cinema score, having already played for a week in some international territories. Downton Abbey has already brought in $61.8 million worldwide. Reviews were similarly strong for the James Gray Extra, which the premiere earlier in the month at the Venice Film Festival. It sits at the 83% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and comes on the heels of the plaudits for Pete in the Quiet Tensions Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which has grossed $3,044.6 million worldwide thus far, but the film in which Pete plays and the astronaut journeying through the solar system to reach his peace explore Father Tommy Lee Jones was the pricey one, especially for an artfully made drama, predictable more on the father-son psychology than the sci-fi spec. The production cost around $100 million for the 20th Century Fox, which was earlier this year. Disney postponed the release of Ad Astra from May to September. The result for Ad Astra followed disappointing results for a handful of the Fox films released under Destiny, included Raw, Panics and the Stubber Ad Astra, which added $26 million overseas, will the on-odd review, giving the film some length. Focus features Down Abbey has the considered the weekend box office, pulling in 31 million in the North America according to Variety, the more than $10 million more than either of its closer rivals Rambo Last Blood and the Ad Astra, which are currently dueling for the second place and the second highest special opening in a decade, which are currently dealing for the second place and the second highest special opening in a decade. After Inglorious Bastard, Michael Engler directed the film from a screenplay by the Jolenia Fellows, who credit the original ITV PBS series. The results surprised box office observe. We had projected the Rambo Last Blood would win the weekend, but in an unprotected development for the British astronomy, this was the case of the Downton Abbey eating Rambo Last Blood lunch so much as it was more lunch for everyone. Rambo 90.50 million dollars was in line with the predictable for the last chapter of the Sylvester Stallone long running franchise, and it's the difficult to imagine a moviegoers who plan to see Rambo opening for the down round, who had projected that Rambo Last Blood would win the weekend, but in an unpredictable development for the British extraordinary, this was the case of the Down Abbey eating Rambo Last Blood lunch so much as it was more lunch for the everybody. Rambo $90,050 million was in line with the predictions for the latest chapter of the Sylvester Stallone running franchise, and it's difficult to imagine a moviegoers who plan to see Rambo opening for the Downton Abbey at the last time. Similar at Astra, $90.2 million was on the high end of the word analyzed, except for the director James Gray look at the father and the sons and outspace. Underdeserved domestic 74 of the down. As often happened, the reason analyzed where the catch fall footage seems to be that did not account for the possibility Down Abbey might appeal to an underdeserved demography. 74% of the Downton Abbey ticket buyers were female and 60% were older than 35. For the whatever reason, the audience rarely responds to Downton Abbey fancy visions of the wealthy people who were not Vicky's damn twist, who did cheerfully murder us all for a nickel profit. With an A cinema score, the film outteases both Ad Astra and the Rambo Last Blood. Focus features presence of the distribution. Lisa Burnell credited the film's success to its focus on the family, in a statement that illustrates how flexible the meaning of the word family can be. Audience were clearly ready to come back to downtown and visit the cleverless and all the familiar faces upstairs and the downstairs. At its core, it's the story about family, and the audience, both original fans and the newcomer, are uplifted by that laughter and joy of film. We are thrilled to be a part of something that began nearly 10 years ago with our friends and the colleagues at the NBC International and the Clinical Films, and to have it remains with the NBCU Universal's family with us now and do as well is amazing. As for returning movie, its chapter 2 and The Hostler did fine with the $70.2 million and the $70 million respectively. The second half of its SAG has now earned $179 million domestically, Hostel in up to $72 million at the other end of the scale. The Goldfish did not break a million in its the second weekend deposit, playing on 2,544 screen, rolling out whatever fan hopes Warner Bros. And Amazon Studio may have been running that their Donna Terra adaptation would become a sleeper hit, and director Frederick Technique documentary has still pulled in the last money over the weekend of any film tracked by Box Office Mojo, earning 1,158 in its 14 weeks. Here the trailer which focused on the exterior of a different area. The Downton Abbey film takes place in the 1927 and hostel launches the J.K. Penny line in the 1983. So by the law of the cinematic knowledge, we can accept a period film about the tasteful, refined ethics of the early 1980s to the exude box office protections sometimes around 2075. See here at the movie. Rambo Last Blood ending expanding, breaking down the iconic action series, Swan Song and whether Rambo dies in the end. In 2019, Sylvester Stallone closed the loop he started with the 1982 First Blood by the releasing Rambo Last Blood, the latest and the likely last film in the John Rambo series. 11 years after the events of the 2008 producers, the film finds Rambo in the Bowes Irish, the seat of his late father Horse Lunch. There he carves out a quiet life with his old pal Maria Batlands and Trina Brass and her granddaughters Gabriela, who he considers his the niche, but that seems like an the athletic epigoal for the characters is soon disrupted by a Mexican cartel leading to a brutal final. It's a nasty ending to a franchise that the evolving signification since we are first meet Rambo nearly for the decade ago. It's also somewhat ambitious collections below Entertainment Weekly breakdown Last Players ending Rambo ultimately feat and the franchise enduring themes. Gabriela is the abdicated for a nightclub by members of the Mexican cartel. When Rambo tries to track her down, he, Breton, and the Robert, the cartel members find a photo of the Gabriela in his the decisions and as punishment, torture her. She named rudely inject with the heroin and the sold into sexual slavery. After Rambo finds the brutal where she being kept, he seems her arms are the convincer in trade market. She bravely concedes as he drives her back to Arizona and tells her now much here means to him. I was lost, I was a lost man, and then I met you, he says, and I saw something that I did not think I did ever see any more good in this world. Some in occasions, and I had a family that I never thought I did ever have, and raising you, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I thank you for that. Thank you. Unfortunately, the amount of drugs in her systems overwhelm her, and she dies on the drive home. Rambo burnings her on the farm. Rambo always to get revenge after Gabriela's death, if only to make her killers feel our grief and know that's the last things they will ever feel. Rambo returns to the farm where he spent years digging a network of the tunnels under the ground. There he installs several crispy body traps to lure the cattle to his trough. He travels to the home of the Victory Oscar, one of the cattle leaders, and their deception him. This lead Victor brought huge to round up and the army of men and the descents on the Rambo ranch. Once he goes the cattle soldiers into the tunnel, he uses the technical know-how and the familiarity with the train to take them out with the Bluetooth, Kevin pipes, Janet traps, and even a deliberate cave in his success. But once he coaxed the cattle soldiers into the tunnels, he used the technical know-how and the familiarity with the train to take them out with the bullets, canives pipes, generated traps, and even a deliberate cave-in. His success, but not before suffering several wounds himself, many of which look serious. Rambo saves Yujo for the final. I could have killed you 10 times, but I wanted you last. He says, I want to say, feel my rage, my hate. He promised to rip his the heart of out like you did mine. Hugo follows Rambo above ground to the brain, where Rambo implants him to the wall with the four arrow, he them and shatters him, knife and the deliver his the promise cutting out huge steel, beating hard. This is what he feels like. He says before pulling the bell. With the cradle biscuit and the elegant blood in Rambo impends to the frame house porch, where he sat in a rocking chair. I have lived in a word of death. He intones in the voice-over. I try to come out, but I never really arrive. A part of my mind and soul got lost along the way, but my heart was set. Bloodlines Rambo implants to the farmhouse porch, where he sits in a rocking chair. I have lived in a word of the death, he intones in the voice-over. I tried to come home, but I nearly arrived. A part of my mind and soul got lost along the way, but my heart has still here, where I was born, where I would definitely to the end, the only family I have ever known. The only home I have ever known, all the owns I have loved are now ghosts, but I will fight to keep their memories alive forever. It depends on how you interpret the ending. If you're taking it literally, Rambo appears to have survived after his movie go. The camera zooms out on the Rambo on the farm's porch, included one we just watched. This stroll down memory lane climates in a shot of the Rambo riding a horse into the great white younger of the Arizona countryside, suggesting that he lives to fight another day. Rambo returns to the farm where he spent years digging a network of the tunnels under the ground. There he installs several grills, body traps to lure the cattle to his stuffs, to travels to the home of the victor. One of the cattle's leader and the deception team, this lead Victor's brother Hugo, to round up any army of men and second on the Rambo ranch. Once he escorted the cattle soldiers into the tunnels, he uses the technical know-how and the familiarity with the train to take them out with the bullets, knife, pipes, generate traps, and even a deliberate cave in the success he but not before suffering survival wounds himself, many of which book series. Rambo saved huge for the final. I gave like you the killed you 10 minutes, but I wanted you last. He says I want to say, feel my rage, my hate. He promised to rip his the heart out, like you did mine. Hugo follows Rambo above ground to the brain, where Rambo implants him to the wall with the four arrows. He then unshutters his the knife and the deliver his the promise, cutting out. He just still breathing hard. This is what he feels like. He says before pulling the blade. With the cradle best and the elegant bodies, Rambo limes to the farmhouse porch, where he sit in a rocking chair. I will have life in a word of the death. He intones in the voice-over. I try to come home, but I never really arrive. A part of my mind and soul got lost along the way, but my heart was set. Blood Rambo impressed to the Frenchie's poor, where he sit in a rocking chair. I have lived in a word of the death. He intones in the voice-over. I try to come home, but I never really arrive. A part of my mind and soul got lost along the way, but my heart was still here, where I was born, where I would definitely to the end. The only family I have ever known, the only ones I have ever known, all the ones I have loved are now ghosts, but I will fight to keep their memories alive forever. That depends on how you interpret the ending. If you take it literally, Rambo appears to have survived after his monologue. The camera zooms out on the Rambo on the farmhouse porch and the credit roll. Then we see scenes from the previous Rambo movie, included the one we just watched, the stroll down memory lane climates in a shot of the Rambo riding a horse into the great white younger of the Arizona countryside, suggesting that the lives to fight another day. You would, however, read Rambo post, Mescare horsey ride as a dead dream. Stallone himself even seems open it to be being previous either way. I just thought it would be fun to imply like did he get away. He said in 2019 interview, I just did that, literally as in his mind, like because I did not know how that was going to be received really. As Dalvin released in the Netflix documentary Slay 2023. The ending was not always so amigos. He explained that the Rambo rocking chair was meant to stop rocking in the film final moments, a strong implications that the characters pass, but he starting regretting the idea that this is the way. Camera zooms out on the Rambo on the frame house porch and the credit roll. Then we see scenes from the previous Rambo movie, included the one we just watched. They stroll down memory land climates in a shot of the Rambo riding a horse into the great white younger of the Arizona countryside, suggestion that he lives to fight another day. You could, however, read Rambo post Mesquier horsey ride as a death dream. Stalvan himself even seems open to it being pursue either way. I just thought it would be fun. Like did he get way? He said in a 2019 interview, I just did that literally as in him. My life because I did not know how that was going to be received really. As Talon reveals in the Netflix documentary Slay 2023, the ending was not always so amigos. He explained that Rambo rocking chair was meant to stop he explained that Rambo rocking chair was meant to stop rocking in the film final moments, a strong implications that the characters pass, but he started re-getting the idea that this is the way this warrior goes out. So in post, he used CGI to ensure the chair continued to rock. Straightforward revealed story about a broken man who vows to kill those who defecated and murder his the strongest niche, but there's a meaning in what the tunnels repent as the final bloody. Early in the film, Rambo experiences a flashback to the victim war while underground clearly continue the tunnels he digging to choice, utilized by the White Kong in the combat. Many of the traps we see in the final from the explanations to the stick traps were clearly inspired by the ones Rambo encountered in the war. Soldiers bring the horse of war back home is not a new dams for the Frenchies, truly it is the prevailing dams, but it's telling that Rambo cleared out the network of the tunnels during a time of peace, climbs and happiness. Climb and relative happiness combat sources through Rambo vines, which is the character's soldiers bring the honors of the war back is not a new dams for the Frenchies. Truly, it is the prevailing them, but it's telling that Rambo crowd out his network of the tunnels during a time of the peace, climb and relative happiness. Combat course through Rambo wines, which is the character's greatest assets, but also his biggest regard. The film likely the last in the franchise, and with the Rambo mourning the fact that he lives in a world of death and that he tried to come home, but I never really arrive. It is in the Rambo First Blood Part 2 that we get one of the franchise's most iconic lines. Do we get to win this time? It's a loaded question that captures the line creep, regard, and the embarrassment of the American role in the Vietnam War. And the when looking at it through the lines of The Last Blood, a film in which Rambo definitely wins, one wonder what it actually means to win. Rambo Last Blood is currently streaming on Netflix. You can also rent or purchase it via Amazon Prime Video. Embrina Gunberg's 2019 film Rambo Last Blood brings John Rambo's story to a very weird, very bad and Last Blood, the fifth film in the Rambo saga, ends with the blood death straight out of a Saw movie where the film animals, soldiers, Sylvester Stallone, Loris and the army of the Mexican criminals into the catacombs under his home where he cuts off their feet, decapitates them, and then removes their still beating hearts with his bare hands. His extreme acts of the violence are recent as the morally permissible, however, as the Mexican characters are both faceless and uniformly evil drug dealers and the human traffickers. The skew law of the molarity that appeals to John Rambo in Last Blood is very similar to the normal truth that the surrounded but Bugs Bunny if you are a cartoonishly. The great law of the molarity that the appeals to John Rambo in Last Blood is very similar to the normal truth that surrounded Bugs Bunny. If you are a cartoonishly evil, under realistic villain and you are to abuse or insult Bugs Bunny just once, Bugs Bunny immediately has the more lenses to abuse in a written tenfold. Even since Rambo First Blood Part 2, the title character has eventually become Bugs Bunny. That is just as the unlikable and the often sees faking off the gains forgiven bad guys that have no real bearing on the reality. If the functions of a Rambo film is to witness or have a hero commit acts of the horizons military brutally and the potential to cheer while the he does do it, then the filmmakers have to make draw sure the audience have us the bad guys way more than they had Rambo. Entertainment for the anyone with a taste for the good movie Last Blood will more certainly disappointed. The ending of Last Blood is even more tragic when Verda consider the arc of the John Rambo tracking him back to its the first appearance in the Cat of First Blood in the 1982. Give the popular image of the Rambo as the sweetie over muscular symbol for the overbearing power of the American military might. It's almost shocking to remember how downbeat and the anti-war First Blood was in the Night Chief film. Rambo, a Vietnam veteran, drive into a small Washington looking for a friend. He survived him. He learns that his friends died of cancer after exposure to Agent Orange. Before Rambo can drive on with his sad extents, he is executed by the local sheriff, who gives him cry for the essentially looking like a bum. The police continue to harass Rambo, making a clearly comment on the how badly veterans were treated after Vietnam. Rambo is arrested and his harassment at the hands of the police ends with dragging some pretty several posts. Tournament stress causing him to snap back into the soldier's mode since the police as enemy combats a large protection of the first blood is dedicated to the standoff between Rambo and the police, with the Richard Scan appearing to explain that Rambo is very dangerous and that breaking its the flight response will cause him to commit murder. Rambo's story is a tragic one. He was training to kill only to be erased and the tournaments by war. Now back in the civilizations he has no application skill. All he know how to do is the murder to hand to be a soldier after a tragic, fearful humor like the Vietnam War. What place does a former killing machines have? At the end of the first blood, Rambo turns himself in before he kills a man trained to kill only to be erased and the tournament by war. Now back in the civilizations he has no applicable skills. All he know how to do is murder. To hunt to be a soldier after a tragic futile Gambir like the Vietnam War. What place does a former killing machine have? At the end of the first blood, Rambo tunnels himself in before he like a man. Resembles Rambo will now go through the carefully process of the demographing. The organic of the John Rambo, giving the popular image of Rambo as a sweet, over-muscle sample for the overbearing power of American military might. It's almost shocking to remember how Don't Beat and the anti-war First Plus was in the North Chief film. Rambo, a Vietnam veteran, defects into a small Washington looking for a friend he served with. He learns that his friend died of the cancer after exposure to Agents Oregon. Before Rambo can draft on with his sad extents, he is associated by the local sheriff, who gives him grief for the essentially looking like a bum. The police continue to harass Rambo, making a crazy comment on how badly veterans were treated after Vietnam. Rambo is arrested, and the harassment at the hands of the police ends up dragging some the pretty surf posts. Rambo is arrested and his harassment at the hands of the police ends up dragging some pretty severe posts. Tournament stress causing him to snap back into the soldier's mode, seeing the police as enemy combats A larger potential of the first blood is devoted a standoff between Rambo and the police. First blood is devoted to a standoff between Rambo and the police, with Richard Carina appearing to explain that Rambo is very dangerous and that dragging his the flight response will cause him to commit murders. Rambo's story is a tragic one. He was trained to kill only to be arrested and the traumatized by the war. Now back in the civilizations, he has no applicable skills. All he knows how to do is the murder, to hunt, to be a soldier after a tragic furtive grammars like the Vietnam War. What place does a former killing machines have? At the end of the first blood, Rambo turns himself in before he kills a man. Trained to kill only to be erased, and the Trozema by word. Now back in the civilizations, he has no applicable skills. All he knows how to do is murder, to hunt, to be a soldier after a tragic world glimmers like the Vietnam War. What place does a former killing machines have? At the end of the first blood, Rambo tunes himself in before he kills a man. Presumed Rambo will now go through the carefully process of the deprogramming, the new and the improved John Rambo. When Gojo P. Customers Rambo First Blood Part 2 was released in May of 1985, the world seems to have changed, dividing its attention what it came to war movie now fully embodies in the Cold War. Reagan's America now seems torn between exclaiming the loss of the Vietnam platoon born on the 4th of the July, castle of the war, Full Metal Jacket, and the blustering America soldiers as more or less inevitable superheroes set down to gun Iron Eagle, the Delta Force, Commando, and the second and the third Rambo movies. The First Blood was certainly a film of the former those, while all its sequel comes from the latter. Rambo was no longer a tragic figure, but an unstoppable badass. He evolved into the face of the overwhelming firepower, and Rambo was no longer a tragic figure but an unstoppable beast. He evolved into the face of the overwhelming firepower, and his skills are now some things that the government can employ to aid in the military operations. The story of the part 2 is that Rambo is named to go back to the Vietnam to rescue survival American POWs still being held captive. While it seems like a straightforward mission, Symbolical Part 2 is a story about how America needs to go back to Vietnam but win the war this time. Part 2 is a military fantasy constructed for the war mongers with the Wonder Bride. PTSD is not just something that can be shaken off but an honest to goodness superpower that allows soldiers to commit the necessary amount of the violence. Peter M.C. Donald Frusty titled Rambo 3 was released in 1988, and once again John Rambo is an unstoppable badass. He's the tragic organ long behind him. In Rambo 3, John is the heir to instantly signaled deflation in the Cold War in a plot point that has not aged well. Rambo's mission is to supply the Mujahideen with the weapons when the Cold War ended and the 90s budget, a time of the relative peace for the United States. Characters like the Rambo become moribund, their military powers no longer needed. Overall, Rambo has reflected the world he lives in. In the early 1980s, he was used as a symbol for the PTS. Throughout the rest of the fight, he was employed to prove how powerful the American military could be, and the 2008 film Rambo, released during the Gojo W-beat admiration seems to have an usual target for its the military area, using Rambo's superpowers to confront the military giant in the Brahma rather than take on more obvious and the complex target often discussed during war on the terror. Last Blood came out during the Donald Trump's administration, and it certainly showed, tapping into the region's era military glory days. Last Blood instead turns to Mexico for its bad days, not the Mexican government, mind you, but of the rag and more. Donald Trump's administrations, and it certainly showed tramping into the region our military glory days. Last Blood instead turns to Mexico for its bad guys. No, the Mexican government, mind you bet, off the rack and more than a literally by tracing Mexican movie villain who abuse women, sell drugs, and the journally awful and the personality free, giving the Trump's administration's aviation to the country of the Mexico. The president sought to abort along the southern border. Last Blood appears to be the playing into the rose fear that the president communicated about it. Recall Trump's speech about how they are not sending their best people, trapping into the economic fears of the American public. In the word of the Last Blood, John Rambo, at least at first, seems to have found peace on a small farm in Arizona in his spare time. However, he has been digging and the enormous network of body trap tunnels under his the property no debut because he know as a movie climax is coming when the Regina daughter of his the business partner trekking into the Mexico to find her biological father. She is immediately kidnapped by an evil drug cartel and is sold into sexual slavery. It will be up to Rambo to go to Mexico to prove the cartel. He will decapitate someone and draw them to his death tunnels. Last Blood was shot in the Bulgaria, the Canary Island, and in Shreveport, LA, using those locals as stand-ins for the Mexico. In Last Blood, Mexico is the deputies as overrun with the crime run down, improve, and the journally crummy. The film lightning and the color trying change when the Rambo cross the border. Indeed, there is a common photography trick that American film employ when the filming Mexican exteriors after making the country look greenish or a smoky brown. Various websites have the complicated visual juxtapositions to the domination. This the habit. This is not the easy to full explore the way Mexico has been depicted in America's cinema throughout history, but know that Rambo Last Blood is a great place to find all of the raw trend on the display. The final scenes are, as mentioned above, on the ultraboth, where our proud American soldiers, now in his the 17s, can play his the valiant skills one last time before he dies. Not only is Last Blood trapping into valiant race it fantastic, but it's the function as an old guy still go it. The narrative is the downright embarrassing. Rambo Last Blood has the same idea themes as a donor had comedy film like the Old Dogs. Rambo is not obsolete. Last Blood argue as long as three are known Americans we had enough to want to kill. Deposit being named after other Rambo. There is no property in the Rambo world, no iron, no self-awareness. Right thoughts, awareness that might makes right and the volume solve problem. Rambo that at the end of the Last Blood seems him the slumping. Rambo is not obsolete. Last Blood argue as long as there are known American we hate enough to want to kill. Deposit beings named after other rampart. There is no poetry is Rambo word, no iron, no self-awareness, just the right thoughts, awareness that might make right and the volume solve problem. Rambo that at the end of the Last Blood seems him the slumping, excited into a rocking chair, comfort that his the volumes was the worth it. What a stranger and the sad for a character marked by the PTSD. While Netflix is the starting to make inner roads into the best pictures category at the Oscar, it been making a strong showing in the best documentary competition for the some time. Although its features documentary catalogs does not stretch very far into the past and is the mostly American, it still has plenty of the dogs that are worthy discovering. True crime story like the murder of the John Bent Ramsey and the sexual abuse of the USA chemist are popular topic, but there are also documentary on the prominent figure from the recent history shoot as Justin Blardine, RBG and the Bicon. There are exploration of the social issue, including racism and the corruption of the corporations under capitalism, even if the subject is something that viewers feels they know well watching these prominent figures Where recently history such as James Bladin, RPG, and the Bible ones, there are explorations of the social issue included racism and the cooperations under capitalism. Even if the subject is something that the viewer feels they know well, watching these documentaries should still be an act of the discovery, providing new information on a well-rounded topic, trying to solve a mystery or the shedding light onto a hidden scandal. Fine film on this list are the hybrid documentaries that blur fictions and non-fictions using Richmond to explore their subjective and the turning drama into a form of a therapy, while perhaps the most rewarding defies definition internally. Here are the 65 best documentaries that you can watch on the Netflix right now. A Dom Burney brilliant easy on the film through a directed line from the days of the slavery and the 13 abandoned to the modern Persian industry complex, which is the essentially slavery under another name, with the contributes from the Angel Davis, Van Jones, Cory Booker, and the Van Grinch. This is a wide-ranging discussion of how the history of the United States has directly led to the over-innocence of the black man, who can be used as for profit labor for the corporations that run private prisons. Police such as suggestions and the vote suppression all contribute to this the phenomenon, as do Republican politicals who regularly overstate how much crime cities face in order to appeal to the other victor. In fact, as the 13 show, violent crime rates are the actually dropping, but the number of people being in credit is the higher than the saver. In car credit in the higher than ever. Then Verney provides forcefully pursues evidence, and you will likely come away from the 13 feeling fried up and the angry. The use of the music really adds to this. The propositions very well added documentary. It's and the overwhelming experience, but feels like it should be mandatory viewing. An adaptation of the James Baldwin's unfishing work. Remember This House. This the extraordinary documentary by the Royal Peak is the dividing into the chapter and the chronic bloodish complicated relationship with the Mecca, as well as his the memories of the Medgar Evers, Malcolm X-Man, and the Martin Luther King chair. In addition to footage of the television's interview with the Bladin, the writer words are the compelling, narrated by the Sample R. Jackson. I am not your nargo examian portraits of the black people in the media included in film and the advertising during the 20th century. The Candace, particularly Bobby, are the point figure in the story, which includes a record of the meeting between Lorena Hasbury, Bladin, and the Candy. Rather than attempting to be an all-encompassing documentary about Bladin, Peak wisely does two things. He used Bladin on words to commitment his the message and also keep the focus fairly narrow. We don't find out much about Baldwin's time in the France or his writings on the security, for example. Urgent instance what are about America as a country and the rocking it must have with the itself in order to change for the better. Before making our skin crawl with the narrative features, the assistant director Kitty Green used the still unsolved murder of the 6-year-old John Ramsey as a jumping off point for a Facnic hybrid documentary. Green used the casting of the mind figures involved into the cast of purpose of the film reconstructions to discuss how Ramsey murder became a media sensation and how it led to many different theories as to the killed her and for what reason. The main things that they attract so much attention to the cast was that the John Bean had been interred in the beauty pageant by her month. Pasty like the rhymes. Many of the women and men auditioned to play Pasty and her husband John are from the Boulders, and during the documentary shared personal by the mother Pasty like the Ramses. Many of the women and the men auditions to play Pasty and her husband John are from the Boulders, and during the documentary share personal anecdotes related to the crime as well as lots of the speculations about the parents' innovations. seems how the different actors celebrate their performance based on their opening of the people involved in the case is one of the most interesting aspects of the film. Casting John Bent is and the usual twist on the true crime genre on that is more about people interpretations of the events in question that the murder itself. It is not the only documentary on this list that uses acting as way to discuss or the cop with real traumatic events still is a relevatory way of exploring difficult subject. This documentary follows Victoria Kerr's investigation into the 1992 death of Marcia P. Johnson and activities for the LGBTQ rights and a prominent figure in the Stonewall rights deposit. It still the documentary gives almost equal attention to Johnson's close friend and follow activities Slavia River, who had 10 years after Johnson. There is a lot of the footage of the Riviera available, most of it the heartbreaking include her being bored while trying to speak at a gay pride event and footage from when she was homeless, living at the same Hudson River Pipers when the Johnson body was found.